VCT Americas Stage 2 is already heading into its Super Week, so it's time to do a power rankings for all the teams in the league to see where these teams are at right before the week starts. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today we are doing an updated power rankings of the VCT Americas. I did one last week before the stage started, and it felt like a little too early because not every team has played. Crew, they haven't played yet. But I felt like since we're heading into a Super Week, it's probably a good idea to do an update of rankings right before the week that probably decides what teams are going to be in the playoffs. So this is the board we have today, and we're going to be ranking these teams 11 to 1. And last week, I definitely got a lot of flack for some of the choices I had, mostly the Energy and Sentinels picks. I did have Energy at 9 last week and Sentinels at 8, and I will say one of those teams moved up and one of those teams did not. And if you know the results of that match, you probably know which one. But I think the main thing that I didn't explain during that video is the way that I do my power rankings is not how I see these teams on paper 1 to 11. I do my power rankings based off of what has happened recently. How have these teams played recently? And while there were roster changes and patch changes and all stuff that do have an effect on how every team is going to play out, I felt like it would have been disingenuous for me to do a power rankings based off of how I think the teams are going to do, even though we've already seen how these teams have done so far. So I did it based off of the last results of stage 1, and now we have the start of stage 2, so there has been some movement. So with all that out of the way, let's get to angering people. Starting with number 11, this is no surprise to anybody. Don't think I'm going to get flack for this pick. MIBR is at number 11 yet again. They do have a new roster. They have new players subbed in, but Rich was not able to make it to the first match, so they did have Shazam. And Shazam did his best, but, it's been a while since he's played pro, and they were up against Leviathan. So we'll see if they get their full roster for the next match, but if Shazam continues to play, then it's not a big deal. They're not making playoffs anyway, so this team is probably going to stay here for the rest of the year. Moving on to number 10, usually I would just put Fury here because they were pretty much locked into this spot for a long time. But no, I'm actually going to put a team that, it might make people angry, but I'm sorry. Listen, I put Energy in the number 9 spot last week because I thought they were one of the worst teams during stage 1. And just because they made a roster change, it wasn't enough to make me put them up in the rankings, even though I thought that they were going to be a better team. But they have a really tough schedule ahead of them. And this is exactly why I didn't put them higher. Because how can I put a team this high when what we've seen from them so far has been mediocre? And yes, they had a roster change, but their schedule is even harder. So the results might stay exactly the same. And things might get worse. They do have 3 matches left. I think at least 2 of those are winnable, but nothing is guaranteed. There are a lot of teams fighting for those playoff spots, and Energy, unfortunately, aren't in the best position. They are in the tougher group. They have to beat some really good teams, and I just don't see it for them. I like the roster change, I do, but right now I can't move them up because they lost, and I don't want to move them, down to like 11th because they're obviously not. And if Furia had lost to 100 Thieves, Energy would have probably stayed in the same spot, but they did move up this week. So apologies to Energy fans, but number 10 is where you guys are right now. Really don't want to do this, really hope it changes, but that's where they are. Moving on to number 9, we have a team that also made a roster change heading into stage 2, and that is Loud. So it was a hard-fought game against Evil Geniuses that ends up going in the way of EG. Loud is moving down 2 spots from where they were last week on my rankings. They were at number 7, now they're at number 9, mainly because they did get passed. EG are looking really good right now, and they did win a map, but unfortunately for Loud, a loss is a loss, and any loss is going to cost this team greatly. They really need to pick it up this split because their playoff chances are dwindling, but I do expect this team to have a bounce back. It's just not a great start to the split. They really have to have a good Super Week if they have any chance. I really am concerned about this team's roster construction as it is right now. Sadak is playing duelist for them right now. I don't love that. I really like Sadak. I think he's a great IGL. Is he a guy that should be your duelist player? No, I'm sorry. I just don't see it working for them. I think they might need another roster change for 2025 to, find the same magic that they have found before. But right now, I just kind of think that this is a lost season for most of the Brazilian teams. Moving on to number 8, we have another team moving down, and that is C9, down from number 6. So C9 loses to G2, and while they did take a map, I definitely felt like C9 did kind of choke that one. They had a lead on the second map, and then G2's phenomenal defense side on Lotus just absolutely steamrolled them. So while I don't want to punish them too much for that loss because G2 are a very good team, to me this just feels like C9 have kind of run out of a bit of gas, and while they did have an impressive stage 1, they fumbled in playoffs, and I don't know how successful they're going to be against teams in their own group. It's definitely going to be an uphill battle for this team, and right now I feel like number 8 is, maybe a little bit too low, but I feel like with the loss and with how other teams have done, that's where they are. Moving on to number 7, we have the biggest mover of the week. They are finally showing up for people that are wondering where they are. Furia at number 7. Incredibly impressive win against 100 Thieves. Both maps were very close. That match really could have gone to either team, but Furia ends up having the resilience and the desire to finally get a win, and they were able to do it against a team that people saw as the best team in Americas heading into Stage 2. I don't know what came over Khalil in this match, but he was absolutely frying, and Zand, while he didn't have the greatest stats, absolutely looks like a good addition. So I do think this is probably the highest that Furia get this year. I felt like with just how impressive that win was, I did have to bump them up at least 3 spots. When you beat a team that's that much higher than you in the power rankings, to me, that moves you up. So while they're probably a worse team than both C9 and Loud, right now, they played better than them last weekend. Moving on to number 6, we have a team that I didn't really want to move because they didn't play, but I felt like just putting them at number 6 for now, just because there were other teams that did play this week that I felt deserved to move up. So with Crew, they were at number 4 last week. They're down at number 6 again because other teams did move up. There's not really much to say about Crew right now. I feel like they are a top 5 team, but right now I feel like there were other teams that deserve to be there. So for Crew fans, try not to take offense to this one. It's not an indictment on your team at all. They do play Sentinels for the first match of the split, so we'll see how that one goes. But if Crew have a decent super week, they should find themselves back in the top 5. I think this team should do some pretty cool things during Stage 2. Do they probably lose to Sentinels? I think they do, but we'll see how the rest of the split goes. They're already in a solid position for playoffs, so not really much to worry about for them. Moving on to number 5, we have our biggest drop of the week. 100 Thieves down from number 1. They are number 5. So they dropped 4 spots on my power rankings. As I said, the match against Furia was really close. Both maps going into overtime, it really could have gone 100 Thieves away, but it just felt like Furia wanted it more. They were a lot hungrier. 100 Thieves clearly were not taking them seriously, with just the way they were acting on Twitter before the match. That was incredibly evident. And I know the Twitter stuff is just, people just trolling and whatnot, just for jokes and stuff. And Busio does take it on the chin when he lost, so I do commend him on that. But at the same time, if you're a team that people see as the best in Americas, the standards are a lot higher. You should not lose that match. It seemed to take them all the way until the second half of the second map for them to realize they could actually lose that match, and then they started to play better. But overall, Furia outplayed them, and when you lose to a team that is that much lower on the power rankings, yeah, that's going to bump you down. So we'll see if they can have a better super week and recover. They absolutely can, but right now, I definitely have my skepticisms when it comes to 100 Thieves. Moving on to number 4, we have our biggest mover up of the week, and that is Sentinels. I told you guys I just had to start them at number 8 because their split 1 wasn't very good, but they looked very good against Energy. They did end up 2-0ing them, and while the second map was close, it did go into overtime, and the map pool definitely did favor them. Chet's map picks just absolutely flabbergast me every time. But overall, it was a really good start to Stage 2 for Sentinels, really needing that bounce back to be able to make it into champs. They should be one of, if not the best team in the group by the end of the stage, and I decided to move them up to the top 4 because I feel like they deserve to be there. It's not exactly the biggest win because Energy, they just have their new roster. They don't have a lot of time to prep, and Sentinels had all this time to rest and get ready and prep. So I didn't want to put them into the top 3 for winning that one, but I felt like top 4 is a reasonable spot to put them for now. Now we're moving on to our top 3, and judging by some of the comments I got on my last video, there probably isn't a lot of happiness with the teams remaining, aside from at least one of them, but we're going to start with one that I absolutely think deserves to be here, and that is Evil Geniuses at number 3. Evil Geniuses really looked good against Loud. Jogamo, I'm telling you, man, this guy might drag this team to a playoff spot. They beat the team in their group that they really needed to beat because the team's below Loud, not much competition there, at least with, the teams contending for the playoff spot. They're basically already out with Furia and MIBR. But Loud was a team you absolutely had to beat. They have the same record as you, and they just barely beat the tiebreaker to go into playoffs. So EG wins that match. They have a long road ahead of them, obviously, but they can do it. Their next match is against Furia, so that's a match that they should win, but 100 Thieves should beat them, so don't take them lightly. But I genuinely think that right now, with just how this team is going, they deserve to be in the top 3. They're looking a lot better. Potter clearly has this team playing a really good system. They're being creative with their comps. Jogamo is frying on any character he plays. So we'll see where things end up for this team, but I am confident that they can make it to playoffs. So moving on to the top 2, I really don't understand understand what the hate for Leviathan is. I was watching Plat Chat's power ranking before Stage 2 started, so not the episode that they did this week. I haven't seen that one yet, but the episode last week. And I really like Plat Chat, and hey, if you want to have me on one day, I'm available. It felt like when they were talking about Leviathan, it was like this team went like 0-2 at Shanghai and didn't win a single round. People were just acting like this team just absolutely dropped the ball at Shanghai, and while, yeah, they didn't live up to expectations, they still didn't play terribly. Yes, they had the 13-1 map against Foot, and yeah, absolutely a bad way to lose, but they still brought that match to a third map, and Foot is a good team. That is a team that is absolutely underrated. They're kind of a dark horse in EMEA, and they've been known to upset teams that are seen as better than them. And Leviathan were able to beat Team 1, and they also started their tournament against Gen G, the team that won the tournament, and they still took them to a third map. So while a team with Aspas should have higher aspirations than not even being able to make it out of the Swiss stage, it's not like they just played horribly. I put them at number 3 last week, so this is them moving up 1, mainly because of 100 Thieves dropping. Them dropping as far as they did kind of messed things up. But I do believe that Leviathan are one of the top teams in Americas. They have one of the best players in the world. Kane is very good as well. Yes, they had their coach leave, and MIBR was the team that they beat, so not a huge accomplishment beating them. But they were still able to get the win. They still have Aspas. If they start losing, I'm not totally surprised, and I will drop them when that happens. But if they continue to win, I'm not surprised, because I do think this team is better than a lot of people say. Aspas, Tex, Kane, those are 3 very solid players. Com is struggling, yes, but Mazzino is doing pretty good. So I don't think that this team deserves to be seen as low as I've seen some people rank them. I don't think they're the best, but I don't think they're the worst either. I think moving them to number 2, maybe that's a bit too high right now, but again, 100 Thieves dropped, so had to put them somewhere. Really don't think this team is as bad as people are saying. I do expect them to be in champs, maybe just by Aspas just dragging them there, but I just don't understand why this team is being seen as so low by some people. They really didn't have that bad of a performance in Shanghai. This was this roster's first time there as a unit, so they were bound to have some growing pains. They were bound to have a rocky tournament, but this team should have the ability to come back. And to cap off our power ranking, of course, the number 1 is G2. Very solid win against C9. They did have to do it in 3 maps, but they did show off their incredible comeback ability yet again. The reliance on comebacks definitely concerns me for the future, but they didn't start this one slow. They did win the first map, and now this team has a bit more experience at the international level. They made it to top 3 in Shanghai. I think this team is going to be very good this stage. I don't know if they win champs this year, but making it there is absolutely in reach for this team. I think they're the best team in the Americas right now. You can disagree with me and you want in the comment section down below. Let me know what your power rankings are and what you think of mine. Please click like if you enjoyed the video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.